Welcome to Seattle, if you are not from here. And if you are, then welcome to room 231, I guess. I am Ryan Price, and I am a longtime member of the Drupal community. And my good friend Salim here is also a longtime member of the Drupal community. Salim is always got something cooking, and right now it is Salim plus many others who have something cooking, which is called DrupalForge. So I'd say this is kind of a hybrid presentation. Some of it is like, let's have a discussion about why local development environments aren't always very fun, and then also do a little demo of the DrupalForge project and talk about some of the benefits of that one specifically. But I think, especially given the level of experience probably of a lot of the people at this conference, we'll get into some side tangents too. So here we go.
Ready to go.
So, why do you want to have a remote development environment versus some other kind? And I think the fact that you can run your application wherever you need to run it and be able to share that with a friend, right? Or a coworker or a client. I feel like the difference between I'm doing this here on my space versus we are looking at something together, right? The day when everybody started going remote, I mean, I've been remote for pretty much my entire career, but more and more companies are thinking remote first, so why not do also the development remote first? I think that's probably part of the whole reason of like why can we do it. Also, it got easier to do, right? It used to be like developing a server would take you weeks or months of writing configuration files and installing packages, and then you got to keep those things up to date. And now we have Docker and Kubernetes, and we can make things happen a little bit faster. This project is actually collecting input from a number of community members. Maybe, Salim, you could talk about specifically, like, how did this get started?
Yeah, this actually, good question. So this started a couple of years ago by Darren, who's I call him the project lead. He's officially the project lead on this. He came to me. I have a company called DevPanel, which it's a dashboard for hosting sites on AWS and other platforms. Darren came to me saying, "Hey, can we do something like this?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." So we started talking from there, and then when Starshot came about, everybody. How many people are familiar with Starshot? Okay, cool. So, okay, well, one person. Yeah. So, Mike. So,
you mean Drupal CMS?
Right, Drupal CMS. So, when Starshot came about, this is when we started rolling with this and saying, okay, let's put something together where people can actually try out Starshot. And then, as soon as we did that, we were like, well, what about other Drupal things like in Drupal 7, Drupal 11, and so on? We're like, oh, can we do that? Sure, we can do that. So that's how it came about. And then all the other folks got involved because the project just kind of mushroomed from there. So yeah, it's pretty much open source project, and a lot of people have contributed to it now. So.
And you're working on turning this into a nonprofit organization,
right.
Too.
So
right?
it's actually set up as a nonprofit, a Colorado nonprofit. We've applied for a 501c3, so that's in the process right now. So the whole thing is set up as a nonprofit, a separate entity. So, yeah.
Cool. All right, let's
next.
All right. The basic premise is, I can let you become a developer on my project by just giving you access to a Git repo and an instance of DrupalForge, right? It comes with development tools that you would need to work on a Drupal project, a WordPress project, and other kinds of projects, but Drupal's kind of the focus here. Right out of the box, it's the images are pre-configured with a lot of tools that you need, and then there's also ways to have like your own customized images added into this project as well, right? The VS Code in the browser, if you have never used that before, it's like dark magic. It is exactly like using VS Code on your local computer, except when you open up the terminal command is running somewhere else. When you hit the save is sending the bits over the cloud to your server. And when you do the debugging, aspects of it and running tests, you're running it over there. It still kind of hurts my brain every time I see it. And then there's also PhpMyAdmin. If you need to get at the database for some reason, you can get in there and dig around, run some queries and things like that. If you don't want to do those on the command line, which you also could do there. But like we said, sharing it with your clients, sharing it with collaborators. You can actually create projects that have multiple people on the team, and so you can have permissions to collaborate on things. You can use your own Git repositories, and then finally you can use your own server. So the development environment, the idea is the development environment runs on DrupalForge. DrupalForge does the work of making sure you can have multiple different environments, but then when you go to deploy, you're deploying to whichever hosting environment, whether that's the one you get to choose yourself or one the client has already set up, or whatever the other situation might be. It's platform agnostic, more or less, right? And then because this is Kubernetes style, pod style hosting, when you're not working on it, you pause it. You're not using the extra resources. You don't have a machine sitting there running 24 hours a day because you don't need it all the time. You need it when you're developing, and when you don't need it, you shut it off. So the default is it comes with a timer built in, so you don't have to think about that in the first place.
Yeah, very cost effective. For us to run, it's free for users to use. So, yeah.
It saves the environment.
That's right.
Okay, let's move on. There's a lot of ways to do local development environments. DDev, a big deal. Now also a nonprofit organization. Lando works great. Doxel, if you have one of these Apple Silicon things, doesn't work anymore. What's that?
Well, I just read VirtualBox just released.
VirtualBox on Apple Silicon. Okay, well that's news hot off the press then. Acquia Dev Desktop, completely dead. MAMP, I have actually seen somebody at the place where I work install MAMP on their government laptop because it was an approved application from like 15 years ago.
Wow.
And it's still on the approved list. Yeah, the place where I work is a federal government contractor, so I have my real computer and then I have my government computer. And my government computer, we can't install Docker. We can't install a lot of things. So we do a lot of our development there directly on the server or somewhat sneakily on our other laptop because we're supposed to do as much stuff as we can on the government laptop, but we can't do local development on the government laptop the way it's set up right now. So something like this would be very, very helpful for me, and I wouldn't have to be calling up people that are on Windows and saying, like, okay, WSL2, you have to change this thing around, you have to change this setting. Oh, that's not working for you because you can't get to that port. Well, let's go to port 8443 instead of port 443, and let's change the domain name to this. And like, none of that happens. You just open up a browser and you're using a tool, right? It's so much faster, and I would have gotten several weeks of my life back from this past year if we had a tool like this at my job.
But
Ryan, yes.
Will it be allowed in the government environment?
Will this be allowed in the government environment? That is an excellent question for which is above my pay grade.
Yes.
I hope and pray. I hope and pray. Where is this being hosted?
So yeah, so that's actually, Chris, that's a great question. So the back end of this is being hosted on DigitalOcean, but the back end, this entire system runs on DevPanel. DevPanel runs on AWS, Azure, DigitalOcean, and other providers. If you run DevPanel on AWS or Azure, you can get those compliance. You can get FedRAMP compliance. You can get FERPA and GDPR and all the other stuff. You cannot get that from DigitalOcean because DigitalOcean does not offer that level of compliance. But DigitalOcean is the cheapest infrastructure that we can buy. So that's why DrupalForge backend runs on DigitalOcean. But DevPanel itself, commercially, when we run it for other companies, most of the companies run DevPanel on AWS because of the compliance requirements. So.
Yeah, I mean, the Europeans probably want it in Europe. So.
Right. And then we run that in Europe as well. We have instances in Canada and stuff like that. But this DrupalForge itself runs in the US and it actually runs in the US and it runs in Canada, but on DigitalOcean. So that's.
I can say personally for the DevPanel product, I used it for a lot of personal projects in the past, pro bono projects, client projects, family projects, when I had the option to use it. And it's really great tool, integrates with my workflow just fine, and I don't have to manage my own Linodes or DigitalOceans or anything else. So I've been using the underlying product for a couple of years, but the DrupalForge of we're going to sort of take some of the shackles off and put it's not even just like a trial mode thing, right? It's not a company that's trying to get access to you so that you can use their service enough to upgrade you. The idea is that it's a resource for the community, and that's why it's being organized as a nonprofit. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. I'm a carnival barker, and I'm trying to look at this guy and make sure I didn't say something incorrect. Some of the other benefits, security. If I have my laptop with all of my customer data or my scrubbed, client information or something like that, this is, physically, you can carry this away and try and get into the password, and I have to get on the phone with IT and say, please destroy my laptop remotely because somebody is holding it right now. There's less opportunities for things like that to happen. There's SSH keys involved, and there's one-time use keys involved, and things like that. And the code, stays in your code repository, right? The data stays on your S3 bucket or wherever until you pull it into the server to run it, and then it gets shut down again.
Right.
Correct?
Yeah, and a couple of other things I want to point out is, since everything runs in the browser, you could run it on even things like the Google Chromebook or something. So you don't really need that much RAM or anything like that. And you can, if you need more RAM or you need more CPU, you just adjust it on the server. So that's some of the things you could do in your environments. So.
And it kind of because you can do the multiple different environments all inside of this, containerized world, you kind of have to do things the right way from the beginning. You can't lazily say, oh, well, let's just do it this way for now, and we'll come back and we'll add some of the CI/CD things later, and we'll come back later and we'll figure out how to do configuration splits. It's kind of already ready to go in a lot of ways, and there's good example projects that you can use as your starting point. We kind of talked about that, setting up local developer machines are challenging. Onboarding developers, if I have a person who's a really good front-end programmer, they've not really used a Drupal a lot before. They might not have a lot of command line experience. They might have a Linux system administration experience. You don't really need to know that stuff to use a platform like this. So, yeah, and then the scalability question too, right? Like your laptop sitting there running the fan all the time and making your lap hot, or it's just running a web browser. So there's some other advantages to things like that as well. Cool. So I feel like we talked about some of these things already. Being able to collaborate with other team members, because you can still have your working copy of a file before you check it into Git. The way this is set up, you'll see when we do the demo, and then you can make Git branches and all the things that you'd want to do in a local development environment. It's just the local is local in the cloud. Yeah, you can have a single environment or multiple dev environments, and then I feel like I said a lot of these things already.
Yeah.
So I think we could probably move on to let's see what it looks like. So this is the interface for DrupalForge as of today. There's a really quick start, Drupal CMS, and then you also see some of those other distributions that are easy to get going as well. So
Yeah.
it takes just a couple minutes to boot up a brand new stack and start using it right away. So we'll just walk through these screenshots real fast here. If you hit the Express Launch button under Drupal CMS, you get really quickly, you get a URL you can click on and a test username and password, so you can try out a copy of Drupal CMS right away. And then this is what it looks like. There's Drupal CMS, as of the last time it got synced with the DrupalForge repository.
Yeah,
and
I wonder
you can get it running.
if I can do a demo right now. What do you think?
Yeah.
Okay. So I can just. Well, I guess not. Well, maybe.
And so you're coming at this as a non-authenticated user. This is
Yeah.
just what the experience that anybody would have.
Oh, I hate these things. So. Cars. Did I get the
I
cars?
think this one might be a car.
Car.
I feel like two of those.
Car.
Maybe I said that.
Verify. Yeah.
Just over the line.
Okay, Express Launch. I clicked on Express Launch. Did I click on it?
Yep.
Oh, there it is. So you see it's ready in less than 10 seconds. And then if I click on this, there's my application, and it's pretty peppy, and I can log in and I can try it out. Similarly, if I go into, this one does not have a dev environment. If I want a dev environment, then I go under Launch, and I can go down here and I can get one without a dev environment. And this takes about a minute to get ready, and I can get one with the dev environment. It takes about 5 minutes to get built out. So I can say launch, and this one actually requires you to fill up a form and so on. But I think that's covered in the presentation. So
Yeah.
I'm going to close this up and go back over here and slideshow.
Right. So yeah, you clicked on this on the demo, right?
Yeah.
And then
You
you
get the
click
dev
on, if you click
environment.
on the developer side, you fill out a form and you give your email address and your Drupal.org username, and then you get this little email, right? And the email is going to have the link to go to your application and some of the information that we need to like verify that you have an email and stuff like that, right?
Right.
And then when you come back to the application, if you have a Gmail, you can push the Gmail button. If you have any other kind of email, you can do regular username and password. And as long as you use that same email address that you just received the email for, that's going to work out just fine. And then you get this dashboard that right now you have one application, but you can eventually have multiple applications where people can share them with you. And each application can have multiple projects, and then inside the project you can have multiple environments. And finally, once you get inside the environment, you can see here there's a link that says open PhpMyAdmin, and there's a link that says open Visual Studio Code. In order to open Visual Studio Code, you hit this button that says generate token, and that will start off a timer to say, okay, for the next 4 hours, VS Code is running for you, it's ready to go. You click this link and it opens up VS Code, and it already knows which server you're using. You know, it knows what files are in that repository, and it's ready to go. So this is for a default application, but you can use this for other kinds of applications as well. Once you start saving stuff, or once you start importing your own code, now it remembers what you did the last time, right? This is the onboarding experience, but the day-to-day experience of using this is just as quick.
Yeah, I actually, we skipped over something, so I'm going to go back one slide. I'm going to point out a couple of things. There's two important things, like if you're using this, there's the pause, unpause button right there. It automatically pauses after 6 hours. So here's the timeout. This starts at 6 hours and it does a countdown. And if you are using this and you need more time, there's a clock. You can extend it. But after 6 hours, it goes into the pause mode. So if you come back, you can unpause it here. That's the other thing you can do here on DrupalForge. So, okay. And then if you open up the VS Code here, it looks like this. So. And how many people have worked with VS Code? Just, okay, so this, you're familiar with this. But this is running in a browser. So,
yeah, and you can see even in the sidebar over there, you can browse through the files. You can actually install extensions, which was news to me pretty recently, that there are extensions available. And then
I'm going to skip to that. Yep, extensions.
Being able to do like the test environments and things like that is all good to go. And then when you want to, you can open up the command
Terminal.
line,
Yep.
and the terminal will actually be able to run terminal commands against your container. So I type Composer, I get the Composer output. I type Drush, I get the Drush output. I use the Lullabot drain pipe, which is like a little task runner, and that is just installed via Composer. So if I can install it, I can run it here. And yeah, whenever you edit a file, the second that you leave, sort of like unfocus the editor window, it saves what you've got there to the working copy, but doesn't commit it until you go to the Git tab to commit things, right? And then you do the same thing you would normally do, stage files, provide commit messages, change branches, whatever things that you want to do. But you can do that all inside of the VS Code window. And in this example, it was showing I can, add code to this file, hit save. It's not committed to my repository, but I can have that pretty much instantly on my application because these files are the files that the web server is running.
So extensions we covered, and then you can talk about the dev prods.
Right, and then there's workflows available that will let you say, set up a server somewhere, give DrupalForge SSH access to that server, and then you're able to push a button, and it goes a really far way to configuring the server for you and pushing your application code over there. So this part is really fantastic. I did a live demo with Salim a couple weeks ago. We went to Linode. We bought a $5 Linode, and I generated the SSH key. I guess we can go to the next screen because it shows that
Yeah.
process, right?
There's a how-to page on the site that walks you through it. There are videos there that walk you through it. The one thing I do want to point out on this slide that we forgot to write in there is that DrupalForge does not offer production hosting. So if you want to do production hosting, DrupalForge just gives you free dev environments. So if you want to set up your own production hosting, you buy your own server, you bring your own server from somewhere else. So wherever you want to get your server from, you can get it from DigitalOcean, Linode, AWS, or wherever you get your server from, bring your own server. You can connect it to your dev environment and then deploy your dev environment to your server, and you have your production environment. So DrupalForge is just dev environments, and it's all free. So that's the one thing we forgot to put in here. So
True. So yeah, I went through this process with Salim, like I said, a couple weeks ago. We bought a brand new virtual machine. I got my SSH key, type it into DrupalForge, push the deploy button, and then it was pretty much working after that. But you can also, obviously, once you get there, you can attach a domain name to it. You can get your CDN set up, and the CDN's, obviously a really good idea and really easy to do these days, so that you don't have to worry about getting DDoSed or anything while you're, building your applications out. And whenever you want to deploy a new version, you push the button again, and it goes out and pushes that code for you.
I assume that when you're doing the prod server build, that it also lets encrypt for SSL?
it does.
Let's
Yeah.
Encrypt is part of the process.
Yeah, so the prod server setup is actually, when you push to the prod server, DrupalForge will set up a WAF for you, a web application firewall, it's called the mod security module for Apache, so which is like secures your website by default. And so you get a firewall by default, and you get SSH by default, and the SSH will renew automatically. So
SSL.
SSL will renew automatically. Yeah. Oh, wait a second. No, that is not correct. So SSL is based on the domain name. So the SSL is happening on the dev environment. We create the SSL and we renew it automatically. But on the production environment, we don't know what URL you're going to put on it. So we cannot give you a SSL. And what happens is when you get Cloudflare CDN, you connect Cloudflare with you give it your domain name, and Cloudflare automatically generates the SSL for you.
So in this setup, you could actually say, nobody's allowed to access my production server except for Cloudflare.
Right.
And now all traffic to
Goes
that server
through
should go
Cloudflare.
through Cloudflare.
Right.
This is like the fastest way to get going.
Yeah, yeah. So you have SSL on the dev environment that we maintain, and then there's SSL on the production environment that Cloudflare maintains. Yeah. So, good question. Okay.
So yeah, to review, creating sites that you can share with other people, creating also those distributions that you can have sort of like a quick start projects, for other people, and then developing in cloud, obviously, and then we're gonna, I think, do a little bit more demo maybe of looking at VS Code in the browser if anybody wants to see that, or maybe this is time for lively discussion, and then being able to deploy things. So
Yeah. Go ahead.
I just had a quick question about the VS Code in the browser.
Yeah.
Because it's running your local shell, I'm assuming you could do a git clone and pull in and have your local Git branch and then push that to a GitHub branch for all of the production deployment.
Exactly right. Yeah. If you don't want
process.
if you don't want to use the button inside of DrupalForge to do the deployment, and you just want to use the Git, you can absolutely do that.
Part of the reason why I was asking is because, well, Acquia charges a fair amount for Cloud IDE as an addition to their platform. And if this has all of that, that is essentially what Cloud IDE is, but without like some of their extensions installed. If you have full access to the shell, can you install things like ACLI or would that be
You can
possible?
install any extension that.
Okay.
The only thing is this is the open source version of VS Code. It's called Code Server, and we have run into issues where there are proprietary extensions that work with VS Code, but are not distributed on the open source marketplace.
Yeah.
So there have been instances where we've had to create issues for those extension authors and said, hey, could you publish your extensions in the open source marketplace? And usually they have no objection. They just weren't aware of it, and they publish their extension, and then we can use it. So if there's an extension that's missing, we just, people have contacted us, we turn around, contact the extension author, and then, we get those extensions available. So
It's very similar to Acquia's Cloud IDE thing, because
Is it?
the Theo project is their base that
Yeah.
does the VS Code in the browser, so it's the same market
Yeah.
that they have to deal with as
Yeah.
well.
But I would say, if you want to install Pantheon Terminus or Acquia CLI, as it's just a pile of scripts, there should be no issue with that at all.
Yeah, I think it would be really interesting. The 6-hour limit is kind of an interesting, maybe it'd make us all healthier developers.
It's not interesting number.
But the flip side of it is, I could actually see a need in the market for a paid version of this that just kind of made it easier than Gitpod. Because Gitpod does require a little bit more setup to do the VS Code in the browser and whatnot. I love this, that it spins up the full environment.
The paid version actually has existed for a couple of years.
Okay.
So this is a new product built on top of that.
Yeah, the paid version is the dev panel application. It's more the enterprise grade application. This is the nonprofit that we created. With the nonprofit, we don't have a sustainable model. But we want to, I'd love to talk to you on getting your ideas on how we can take something like this and create a sustainable model where people can become members of the nonprofit or purchase extendable, instances or something like that. So I'd love to get some feedback on that and see, we're still discussing it internally, how to create a sustainable, self-sustaining model so that we're paying for the hosting of all these environments, and it's not a burden to any one particular company. So yeah, and will likely get sponsors for this from different agencies and stuff like that. One thing, can I jump in here?
Yeah.
Okay. One thing I wanted to talk about is you see there are different versions of Drupal here, and there's even Backdrop here, CVCRM, Umami. This is designed so that developers can take their own Drupal distributions or recipes that are coming up, and they can share those here as well, and let other people try them, and let other people spin them up, and let other people even buy those recipes directly from the developer, and not just buy the recipes, but also buy support and hosting of those recipes directly from here. So that is in the roadmap, so that developers can actually take what they've created and show it off. And it's not just developers, but also agencies. And because some agencies actually focus on certain niche type of sites. so they can take, showcase some of their work and put it on there, let other people try it out, and get customers that way as well.
Well, and I've talked to a lot of people in the last few weeks who are, sort of like coming back to Drupal in some cases, or they've only been on Drupal 7 for a while, and then the deadline's finally looming in front of them, and they're trying to learn some of the new Drupal stuff, but the local dev part is a barrier to entry, right? I never used Docker until I had to. I never used Composer until I had to. And so some of those, like things that if you use them every single day, you get good at it by necessity and not really because it's easy. So there's a lot of concepts to unpack when you're doing one of these things, and this kind of like helps to make those things a little bit easier onboarding. I can't make Composer easier, right? I can't make Composer update lock, any more obvious, but I think tools like this, where it just starts working right away, it makes it a lot easier to sell to somebody and say, you can figure this out.
It's expected, I'd say, at
Right.
this point, for any serious application.
Exactly,
You know?
yeah.
So I think it really does go a long way for the community, and what you guys are doing is great.
Just curious, did you get permission to use the Drupal trader?
It is good. That's a very good question. We didn't have to get permission because it is built into their license. If you're creating a product, we actually read through it. If you're creating a service or something, first of all, it's a nonprofit. Second, if you're creating a service or a blog or a camp, for example, where the whole idea is to promote Drupal, then you don't have to get permission. You can actually use Drupal as part of the service. And it's a nonprofit, is there to promote Drupal. So
For the betterment of the community, I believe this.
indeed. So we actually, one of the people on our, I'll go back to this. David Jaffer is a lawyer, so he went through. We actually have a lawyer on our board, so he actually went through all the legalese and gave us a thumbs up. So.
Yeah. Do you want to show a little live VS Code for us?
Yeah.
You can log into any old site, I'm sure.
Yeah. We'll do another. This is something that's in development. Does not need. You don't need to actually go through and create. Go through and. This is something. It's in development. Let's just say that. So.
By the way, use the Cloudflare anti-bot technology. It's much better than the Google.
Oh, you're recommending the Cloudflare anti-robot thing is a good idea?
Oh yeah, but this is a new widget that can be embeddable on anybody's site. So if you guys have your own version of Drupal, or if you want to take this widget, embed it in your own website, you can, and you can the user gets the application URL, and they also get they also get VS Code. They don't have to enter their email address or go check their email or register or anything like that. They just get the VS Code link and VS Code password. And
it's my favorite dialogue in VS Code.
and then you get access to VS Code. Now this is a much more streamlined experience where anybody can actually spin up a site and get the dev environment without registering with their email address or waiting for the email or anything. And you saw that it started up within 30 seconds. So it's not a 5-minute wait like before. So this is still in development, but this is a preview mode of it that I'm showing off here. But this is VS Code, and this is all recipe. This is Starshot prototype we're showing here. And if I go under, for example, if I go under web and I look at the index file, and if I just go in here and say, I'm just going to type in PHP info, and the site is running, and I'm going to refresh it, and you saw that I didn't commit it. This works just like a local dev environment. I just made an edit to it. I went to the site, I reloaded it, and you see PHP info. I'm going to comment this out. I'm going to go to the site, I'm going to reload it, and the site is back. So, and then if I go over here, I can look at all the VS Code extensions that are installed here. I can install other extensions if I wanted to. This is the Git interface, and this is all the entire thing is all SCP is built in, so you can drag and drop files into it as well. So.
Where's terminal?
Oh, that's a good question. So you go in the burger menu, and terminal is right here, and you select new terminal,
Comes right up, yeah.
and there's the terminal. So you can actually, and then Composer is built in, and then if you wanted Composer, this is Composer 2. I believe if you wanted Composer 1 is built in as well. So there's Composer 1. You get some errors with it, but warnings with it. And then Drush is built in as well. So it's and if you run top, I think this is running with 2 gigs of RAM, I believe.
That's what it looks like.
Yeah. So there are other environments that run, depending on the environment. Some have 4 gigs of RAM, some have 1 gig of RAM, and so on. So we actually optimize it on the back end to see, make sure it's running properly and it's got all the extensions installed and everything. So we're working with some other companies, and they want their own distributions, and some of them want 4 gigs of RAM, but then they want everything run on their own cluster. So some companies are actually, we're talking to them about running their distributions here, but whenever you spin up something, it'll actually spin it up on their cluster. So, yeah. Does that make sense? Questions?
Yeah, I mean, like I say, this is something I wish I could use in my government job, officially. The thing that I really miss from using some of the other, companies that have been out there was, I want to make a branch, and I want to have an environment that just worked for that one branch. And I want to be able to show that to somebody, be like, hey, I've been working on this. As it is, I have to say, I'm the owner of dev right now, right? Please don't check out new things on dev because I'm trying to demo something, or we're trying to QA this thing. It feels like 15 years ago, before we had the ability to spin up branches and do some of these continuous integration things. And we've had to build that whole infrastructure from scratch at my current job. So whenever I see something like this, it warms my heart that it's possible in a perfect world. So there are people out there who are still doing it the very, very old-fashioned way.
Any other questions?
We're making progress. It sounds like you can access the internet.
I can access the internet.
Department of Defense, down the road here. No. It's scarier, too, to break the rules there.
Part of our local development process of getting the database launch site, staging site. If Josh was asking, I could do that using my hosting provider's command line tools. But if I didn't have that, and I need to upload the database, is that through here, or would I have to?
So the question is, what if I have to upload an SQL file?
Yeah.
How do I get an SQL file onto this environment?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. The VS Code has a MySQL extension. We're in the process of configuring it. If you go through the, if I'm going to log in, let me log into.
You're saying, yeah, you can do that. That's
Yes.
Yeah, cool. It says something.
The short answer is yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I forget about that.
So PhpMyAdmin is built into it. Have you guys used PhpMyAdmin?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So PhpMyAdmin is built in, and is this running? Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's PhpMyAdmin built in. I have to actually activate it and start running it. But you can use MySQL on the command line if you want to import export database. You can use Drush to import export database if you want. And then PhpMyAdmin is available, and then we're actually adding, by default, we're going to add a MySQL extension to VS Code as well, and that way you'll be able to do everything like you'd be able to do with PhpMyAdmin, but just in VS Code.
Well, and
by
can you
default.
click on the variables tab down on the left?
Yeah.
Right. You could put your Amazon S3 tokens in here, right? And then they're available on your server. You can grab files from your bucket or your favorite, file hosting provider, whatever that happens to be, pretty easily too, I think.
Yeah, so this is meant for API keys and so on, so that you're not hard coding those in your
This is per project.
Yes.
It's per, yeah, and
Well, like per environment, right?
per environment, exactly. So as you promote the code will inherit, the branch will inherit these key value pairs. So,
Right. I use a lot of like env files to make sure I've got all the right variables in the right place. But this basically is that. So
Yeah.
you can save yourself one step on this server anyway.
And then if you have this, then you can actually create the htaccess lock, which is simple access lock on the site. So you can set those things up. There's file permission shenanigans you can do in here as well. But, members is something where you can actually add collaborators to certain branches, or you can add collaborators at the workspace level. And well, apparently I don't have permission to add collaborators here. If I had permissions, then I'd be able to add collaborators. But so you can add collaborators. You can look at the logs. Cluster. I don't have permission here to create cluster, but this is for cluster. We talked about the VPS deployment. There's also cluster deployment for scalable sites with blue-green deployments and things like that. So that's all disabled. That's for the enterprise version. Custom domains, that's disabled here. You just get the base domain. For DrupalForge, the custom domains are handled by Cloudflare. And then configuration, the size of the container is fixed per application by the DrupalForge team. In Dev Panel, for the enterprise user, they can change the size of their container because everything's running on their own cluster. Code, you can actually set up webhooks and set up your own backups and get the activity log.
So yeah, it might be good to just illustrate the relationship between Dev Panel and DrupalForge, right? Dev Panel is the commercial version of this, the enterprise version of this, and DrupalForge is one client. Is that a good way to put it?
Right. DrupalForge is a client that has very restricted access to, like, there's a lot of things that are turned off. So a lot of the enterprise version features are turned off for DrupalForge. So for limited, access for general public use. So.
But it also shows the amount of work that you put into being able to white label Dev Panel that you could build DrupalForge in a couple of months, right?
Right. So Dev Panel, we had gotten a request of, like, can we run Dev Panel under our own domain name and things like that. So now Dev Panel runs under the DrupalForge domain name. It also runs under different, whatever company domain name that they need to run it. So that's the other thing that you'll see in DrupalForge. So.
Yeah, it's not a commercial for Dev Panel, but I think it helps to understand
Right.
how did they get here in the first place? Like, what was going on that you got to this really awesome dashboard? Is like Celine's been working on this as the commercial product for a number of years.
But if we didn't have that capability, we wouldn't be able to create this in 2 months. So that's the only thing. So yeah. We didn't create that like from scratch, in 2 months. So yeah.
Yeah, cool.
All right.
Bravo.
Yeah, bravo.
Thank you guys. Thanks everyone.